This is one of the ways the races condition each other. It is virtually Pavlovian. All my life I have seen what Obama saw, that little pleasant reaction in whites at the absence of anger in blacks. Conditioning is inevitable with so consistent a stimulus. It happens organically in the flow of life, and whether one develops a talent for bargaining or challenging is largely an unconscious negotiation in which many factors come into play. Challengers send out anger signals, coolness, a flat affect, and ambient hostility that try to make whites feel white and thus defensive. Bargainers relieve the anxiety of being white. Of course, many blacks can be ambidextrous, but conditioning, temperament, and life possibilities usually combine to give us a leaning one way or the other. If one consciously uses the bargaining strategy, as the young Obama did with his mother, it is after the fact of already having identified with the bargaining mask. So it was fate that made Barack Obama a natural bargainer. His interracial background in itself assuages considerable racial anxiety in whites. It makes the point that he is not likely to be angry at whites in some blanket way. After all, he was raised in a white family. His earliest and most formative human connections were with whites, so his very family background disarms him as a challenger and gives whites that little grace note of surprise that relaxes them. As I have noted, the story of his interracial background is usually the first thing one hears about Obama, but it is also very often the first story he tells about himself. At the 2004 Democratic Convention in Boston, Obama made the now famous speech that launched him as a new star in national politics. By the third sentence of that speech, we had heard about his Kenyan father and grandfather, and by the eighth sentence, we had met his white mother from Kansas. By the third paragraph, we had the white grandparents as well as a reference to his parents' improbable love. And then came a deft recasting of this pedigree that would have scandalized most Americans only a generation ago. I stand here today grateful for the diversity of my heritage, and in no other country on earth is my story even possible. Here, he both compliments his nation and gilds his heritage with today's golden word, diversity. But then, Obama had published Dreams from My Father almost a decade before this speech. In that small but interesting genre of interracial memoirs, this book will have a lasting place. Instead of the politician's usual guardedness, the book is almost naive in its degree of self-disclosure. There are pretentious passages and longueurs, but there are also places where he writes as if the reader is almost beside the point, as if he is marching through certain emotional details for his own private purposes. The book will not be touted up as a political accomplishment, but it is an accomplishment nonetheless. It goes too far to suggest that Obama's openness about his background in this book and in his speeches is conscious bargaining, that he is trying to manipulate America the way he tried to manipulate his mother back in high school. After all, he is a man with an unconventional background, and he no doubt hopes that that openness will make him more familiar to people. But this is also precisely what makes him a perfect bargainer. Apart from any intention on his part, his heritage does the most important thing a bargainer can do. It dispels racial otherness. It says to whites that he is not and cannot be the sort of black they fear, that menacing black other who would look upon their white skin as proof of racism. In Dreams, he says, "Sometimes I would find myself talking to Ray, his black high school friend, about white folks this and white folks that, and I would suddenly remember my mother's smile, and the words I spoke would seem awkward and false. Or I would be helping Gramps dry the dishes after dinner, and Toot, his grandmother, would come in to say she was going to sleep, and those same words, white folks, would flash in my head like a bright neon sign, and I would suddenly grow quiet, as if I had secrets to keep. White folks is a term that shames Obama. In his mouth, it is bigotry because it paints all whites with the same brush, and he knows in the most personal of ways that all whites are not the same. He knows that, where whites are concerned, he has to observe carefully, suspend judgment, and make distinctions. In other words, he has to give whites the benefit of the doubt. He has to bargain. He has to give whites their innocence until they prove unworthy of it. This is what white Americans sense in Barack Obama. On pain of his own personal integrity, he simply cannot be a challenger. Challengers, like Obama's black friend Ray, deprive whites of their racial innocence until they do something to earn it. They promote racial otherness because it is the basis of the identity politics that makes whites obligated and blacks entitled. They excite racial anxiety in whites rather than relieve it. Challenging is the mask worn so effectively by Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, and much of today's civil rights leadership. People and organizations surviving almost entirely on the money of American institutions on the run from the racist stigma. Such people are now grating annoyances in American life because they are opportunists living off the moral authority of black suffering. Still, these all-too-familiar challengers have come to play an unexpected role in the Obama saga. It is precisely against the specter of an Al Sharpton that a Barack Obama looks so fresh, new, and appealing. A figure like Sharpton literally defines Obama as a breath of fresh air. He is an advertisement for Obama, the overweight slattern next to the svelte beauty in the weight loss ad. Sharpton and Jackson make the point, better than Obama's most savvy speechwriter ever could, that Obama is a black man for all people, a black man who can only give whites the benefit of the doubt. What white Americans deeply long for is a bargaining relationship with black America. 40 years of relentless challenging, of living under constant threat of stigmatization as a racist, of hearing that one's country is racist to the core, has generated a profound hunger in whites for bargaining, the chance simply to be given the benefit of the doubt. It is Barack Obama's extraordinary good luck that the arc of his life and political career has intersected with this great hunger. He is a talented politician, but he is a phenomenon, an iconic Negro, because of this intersect. Still, this blessing of luck is also what ultimately makes him a bound man. What the gods can give, they can take away.